famous rabbis of yesteryear of Tunisia. It should most likely be the last part here inside the series, and where we're exploring some of the rabbis that really shaped Tunisian Jewry. We covered some of the rabbis yesterday. Obviously, this is, I think, the 7th or 8th part of our series, if I'm not mistaken. So let's continue over here. Just we're gonna. A chance are that we possibly missed out on some Rabbonim, and much apologies if anyone felt I should have spoke about more Rabbonim or not. But over here we happen to be. I want to speak about Chaim Chayuta Ozan. If I'm not mistaken, he was a great rabbi of his time, lived between 1918 to 1995. The fifth Vada is his Hilula. He was from Jerba. His father was Rav Moshe, if I'm not mistaken, and would grow up in Torah in Jerba, and would learn under especially Rav Chaim Chayuta Huri, another great rabbi, I believe, mentioned on various occasions before. He would actually move to Ben Garadan in the southern part of Tunisia, just to, let's say, the border of Libya at that point in time. And I think he would also work, and at the same time he would be, let's say, teaching, educating, learning various points of time. I think was close to Rav Makhluf Yana, if I'm not mistaken. And very interesting. I think in 1942 he got married to his wife Marat Misa, I believe her name was. And I think sadly she would pass away, and later on he would get married to Marat Chaviva, happened to be the daughter of Rabbi Kadir Aton, if I'm not mistaken. And very, very interesting. So he was a great rabbi of his time, and I think he was a treasurer of the Agudat Ateret Zion, if I'm not mistaken. One stage in time, I think he would eventually make Aliyah to Eretz Israel at the time period when Rabbi Makhluf Yana would actually go over there and would work. At that point in time, he worked also before as I think when Rav Makhluf Yana moved to Eretz Israel, he would start working as a rabbi of Garadan, the official one over there in of itself. So I think eventually in 1980 he made Aliyah to Eretz Israel and would live in Ofakim. He would, and obviously that would be a big move. Baruch Hashem, actually quite a Aliyah relatively, and he would become a rabbi with Kehila in Ofakim. He would work as a shochet, also a kosher slaughterer, and various different greatnesses. I think he passed away on the 5th Badar in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. And I think various different books of his and teachings will be printed after he passed away, if I'm not mistaken. I think especially in the year 2018, quite recently, there was a publication, if I'm not mistaken. So that's very, very interesting. Let's speak about more rabbis over here. We spoke about Rabbi Chaim Huri. I think we did speak about him. Let's just speak about him again just for a minute over here. He was arguably one of the standout great rabbis in Tunisian history. I think his Hilu's 25th born 1885 and passed away in 1957, if I'm not mistaken. I do think we did speak about him in depth, I think 2 or 3 classes before. So let's just talk. He was well known for his Avat Yisrael, just once again we can just talk about. And he was I think, had a connection to the Agudat Ateret Zion, if I'm not mistaken. He would eventually make Aliyah to Eretz Israel, and I think possibly in the year 1957, if I'm not mistaken, and would dwell in Bnei Brak. While he was in Tunisia, he did grandiose and huge amounts of activities for the Jewish congregation over there. He was only 18 years of age when he was ordained to the rabbinate. That's something else to add on to him. But I think we did speak about him before. So let's move on. Rabbi Chaim Kadir Matzliach Mezuz. Obviously, we mentioned about him. He passed away sadly in the year, was murdered in 1971. Another rabbi to speak about over here, who we didn't speak about, I think, yet, Rabbi Yosef Bochrit. He was born in 1885, passed away in 1949. Once again, also on the 5th of Adar, I believe he was, and he would learn under Rabbi David Kohen Gadisha, if I'm not mistaken. He would work. It was press time, I think. He would work while learning also. And I think it was in 1915, for example. I think after his rabbi passed away, he was appointed a dayan in the Jewish square, on the Charat Zaira. And he was only 31 years of age at that point in time when he'll take this, premiership position over there. And I think eventually he'll go to Zarzis. He'll become a rabbi over there at one stage in time, and really doing huge amounts of works and publishing works, if I'm not mistaken. and was seen as a huge part of the Kihila over there. So that's very interesting. He passed away in 1949, and I think 30 years after he passed away, I think Rosh Chodesh Elul, they would actually eventually bring his bones to Eretz Israel to get burial in Har HaZeitim. Okay, so let's continue speaking. We're just speaking about Rav Yosef Bukhari, spoke about Rav Yosef Huri, spoke about Rav Yosef Kohen, Sosa Kohen. Let's speak about Rav Yanon Hori, another great rabbi. I think we did mention him on previous occasion. He was born in 1925, passed away in 2004. Actually, Tu B'Shvat is his Hilula. He came from great auspices. The father, obviously, Rav Chaim Hori, who we mentioned about before. He was born in Jerba. I think his father, Rav Chaim Hori, was appointed head of Jewish court in 1926 when he was very young. And in 1929, when he was only about 3 or 4 years of age, his father would send him to be educated in the island of Jerba. I think his father was working somewhere else in the rabbinate. He was known to become a grand jurist, a brilliant, diligent Torah learner. He was close to other rabbis, if I'm not mistaken, especially Raphael Kadir Tzaban, Rav Rachamim Chai Chayuta Kohen, and will learn and will get deep, let's just say, within regards to learning. He would get married to, I think, Rabbanit Mazena, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from the Trablasi family. And then he would eventually move to Gabs, if I'm not mistaken, and he would take this specific position on over there, which is very, very interesting. And then come up 1950, I think he would go to Eretz Israel. He would actually make Aliyah at that point in time. He would be fortunate enough. And 1954, Alu Ishto Mazina B'Shlar Yildim. Him hitgru b'Sha'ar Aliyah b'Haifa. I think they would live in Haifa, if I'm not mistaken. Him and his family. Eventually, Lebeit Olim, if I'm not mistaken, Pardes Chana, that would be the next move. And I think eventually in Bnei Brak also. I think he would take on an important position in Kisei Rachmim in Bnei Brak. I think come with the year 1992, he set up the Kollel Givat Chaim in Givat Chaim, very prestigious position over there. And he was known for his great Ahavat Yisrael, let's just say in itself. He passed away on Tu B'Shvat in 2004. We're talking about 22 years ago. Rabbi Yaakov Cohen, there was several of them. There were two different Rabbi Yaakov Chadads, if I'm not mistaken. One passed away in 1867, one passed away in 1949. Rabbi Yaakov Huri, we could mention about him, but we're not going to mention. He was born in 1863, 1929, he passed away. Another great rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Kohen Gadisha. I think we did mention about him. He passed away in the year 1910. Rabbi Yaakov Kohen Yonatan, he passed away in 1936. Let's just say a short word within regards to him. I think on 6 above is his Hilula, respectively, over there. He passed away nearly 90 years ago. And he was a Paitan, he was a Nagan, let's just say. Was well known for making Sameach, Chatan and Kala, doing Brit Milot, respectively. And he's known for his humility, his humbleness, his tzniut, in of its way, and really just promoting Torah, especially through a music point of view. And I think he eventually make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not so sure. It could be that he did move to Libya, I think, before he passed away. So very, very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Just another rabbi just to point out over here. As we're exploring the Jewish community history here of Tunisia, so welcome to anyone in our channel. Rabbi Yaakov Pariente, I think we did mention him. He passed away in 1879. He was he would become a great rabbi also in Tunisia. It was going from, I think, Algiers also, and would live in by the port of Annaba at one stage time, Bonn. I was working as Shliach Tzibur, for example, an educator. He was a Rosh Kahal over there, and doing various different important positions. That's something that we have to point out over here. Okay, so let's continue speaking. At the moment, another Rabbi Yaakov Tusi, lived between 1751 to 1812. He was about 60 years of age. I think Yud Gimel Tammuz is his Hilula. He was a great rabbi. I think he would learn under auspices of Rav Yosef Zraka, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Yitzchak Lombroso. And I think in 1800 he would go to Eretz Yisrael with his wife and son, and really become a great rabbi in Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken. So that's needs to be pointed out. Rav Yitzchak Abrami, I don't think I've mentioned him. He was a great rabbi. I'm not sure when he passed away, but I think he was quite close to Rabbi Yehoshua Basis, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he was known for writing different Torah works. I think various different manuscripts, let's just say, various, especially Imre Kadosh, the Arasusa, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of it was printed after he passed away. That's something that we have to point out over here. Rabbi Yitzchak Bokobza, we did mention about him. He lived between 1853 to 1930. Also, Rabbi Yitzchak Haitab, very much we spoke about before. Rabbi Yisrael Zayton, we've mentioned about Rabbi Kadit Shlomo Aton. He's another key rabbi. Let's just mention him for a minute. Yud Chet Adar is his Hilula. I think he actually came from great auspices. His father, and I think he would learn actually be a Talmid of Rav Mekikat Shaul Hashli, if I'm not mistaken, and would work inside the Talmud Torah. He was close to other rabbis also, especially Rav Cheskia Peretz, or he was the Beit Knesset of this, respectively, over there. And I think he would eventually move to Eretz Israel and live in Beersheba, if I'm not mistaken, and would do various importances, especially in the synagogue called the Torah V'Chayim, which was named after Chaim Huri, if I'm not mistaken, and he was a Chazan also, and a great rabbi. So just another rabbi that we have to point out over here. Friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community over here as we're exploring some of the history. Rabbi Kamias Ben Sion Hori, who was he? He was a great rabbi. Chav Zayin Tevet, which I think is going to be next week, marks his Hilula. So that's very important. I think we did record a video about him last week. He was born in 1924, passed away in 2004, and would actually come from some of the great rabbis being imbued from Mednin, especially Rav Mordechai Sagron, the author of the Devrei Mordechai, if I'm not mistaken. I think during the Second World War, there was problems in Mednin, if I'm not mistaken, and many people will flee the city during the war, if I'm not mistaken. And he would eventually go to Tunis, and over there would learn in yeshiva of the city. I think it was connected maybe to one of the Chabad yeshivot, also with the Chabad movement, we have to point out. And 1955, eventually, I think he would make Aliyah, move to Eretz Israel, and actually he would live in Kfar Chabad, the village of Chabad, over there, respectively. And I think he did suffer some sufferings before he passed away in the year 2004, and was buried in Beit Amin, Akron. And I think the children will actually print this book by Chachem Shlomo, and another book called the Berechev Yisrael. These are things that we have to point out within regards to him. He was a great rabbi in his time. Now, friends, everyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we're exploring the life of some of the great rabbis that actually came from Tunisia in their day. So it's a special edition of here. Rabbi Matok Khatab, I do believe we recorded a video about him at the time of his Hilula more than a year ago. Yudchet Kislev, week before Hanukkah, was his Hilula. I think he would learn Torah under Rabbi David Gisha in Jerba, and would come out with great Yirat Shamayim. I think he also spent time in Ben Gardan. He was, which is actually, I think, quite close to the border of Libya, which I spoke about. He worked as Dayan, Darshan, a Chazan, an educator for the Kehila itself, and would take on specific positions, especially during specific points of time, especially 1915. I think a book of his would come out in Jerba, if I'm not mistaken, the Ora V'Simcha, if I'm not mistaken, which was Chidushim on various ethical teachings, Musar, we have to point out. And 1922, I think that his second book, the Sason V'Yakar, which actually would come out, which had various Chidushim, which is very, very interesting. And I think he passed away, if I'm not mistaken, in the year 1925. Rav Khatab did. Rav Matok Mezuz, that's very interesting. He passed away, he himself passed away in the year 1944. He was, 1954 he passed. away. To be precise, I think it was on the 9th of Adar. He passed away. He was the son, if I'm not mistaken, of Rab Matok Mezuz. All right. No, sorry. I think he was the son of Rab Chacham Rachamim Mezuz. He grew up in Jerba, if I'm not mistaken, and very much was close to the book, the Kiset Rachamim. And sorry, I think his father, Rav Rachamim Mezuz, was the author of the Kiser Rachamim and was a president of the Kihila. Also, his mother, Marat Amima, was, I think, the great granddaughter of Rav Nisim Chadad, if I'm not mistaken. It was Harav Shel Hagishamim, also popularly known as, because we did speak about, I think, when the miracles that did happen at those points in time. I think he got married, if I'm not mistaken, to Rabbanit Yasmina, and they would have ben echad or banot, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so he was great Rabbi Rab Matok Mezuz, we have to point out, and passed away, I believe, in 1954, if I'm not mistaken. I think the book will come out afterwards from maybe descendants after he passed away. Yeah, there's so many rabbis that we could speak about. I know we might have missed out on quite a few here inside the series, so I really apologize to anyone if we happen to have over here. Harab Moshe Bishi Maimon, another great rabbi. I think he passed away in the year 1927. Another great giant, 11th of Tammuz, Isis Hilula, and came from great auspices. I think his father's name, Rab Chacham Yitzhak. I think he was born in Jabs in Tunisia. He would become the Talmud of Rav Avram Alush, and will actually have, I think, bring about his book, the Debrei Brit, if I'm not mistaken. It was close to other rabbis, Rav Fraj, Alush, Rav Yitzchak Kobza, Rav Fraji Damari. Also, and Rav Maimon, I think, would get married to Marat Zimrara, and they would have 11 children altogether, I think, sons and daughters, if I'm not mistaken. And Echad Mehem Shemo Ezel Leitzlan. Unfortunately, that was sad news over there. Kshaya Rabbah Shel Ha'ir Gabs. He would be the rabbi of the area of Gabs. Very, very important position. And I think he would later on get married to a second wife. V'hu nasa isha shniya v'shema Rachel b'chala. ונולדו להם שתי ילדים, שלחה מותו ומצוא על ידי חכם חיים חורי. Chacham Moshe Bishi Maimon, Dayan Morat Tzedek. He was Dayan, he was a Morat Tzedek of the Jewish community of Gabs. He was a Darshan, he was a Chazan, especially during Shabbatot and especially during Yomim Noraim. And he was one proficient to blow the shofar, if I'm not mistaken. He seemingly passed away, I think, on the 11th of Tammuz, if I'm not mistaken, and was buried in Gabs. Eventually, they would actually bring his bones, and he will have a burial in Beersheba, we have to point out here. Friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. As we're really wrapping up and exploring a few more rabbis that actually came from Tunisia, notable rabbis. Rav Moshe Musa Hachadad, who we spoke about before, I think 5th of Av Isiluli, he passed away about 32 and a half years ago, 1993. He was born in 1909. He would... he wasn't very well known over there. I think his father was a Sofet Stam and a Shochet and a Bodek. Rab Moshe or Rab Musa Chadad who learned Torah under Rab Mikiket Sheli and would really, really excel, let's just say, in his learnings. I think Rab Moshe Chadad will get married with Chana, I think the daughter of Rab Yosef Khori, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a Sofet Stam himself. He was also a Shochet, a Bodek in Jerba, and take on various different positions, let's just say. I think connected to the book, the Devek Tov, if I'm not mistaken, and various other books. So he passed away in the year 1993. So that's very interesting to point out over there. Friends, we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to speak about some more rabbis of this. Just watch your space, and just wait a minute. There's so many rabbis to cover and get information. Once again, I really apologize in advance if I'm not going to be able to cover everybody over here. So we'll just be back in a minute, friends. Hi, shalom everyone. Thanks for being patient over here as we're exploring the history of Tunisian Jewish community over here on what most likely is going to be the last part of the series over here. We're exploring some more of the rabbis over here. There's so many that we could cover, but I don't think we could, just time-wise, it would be very, very tricky over here. So once again, apologies if we are going to miss out some rabbis. Rabbi Nissim Trablassi, the great rabbi, lived between 1910 to 1997. Rabbi Sassi Cohen, I think we mentioned about before. Rabbi Sa'id Haddad, he lived between 1890 to 1953. Another great rabbi. Rabbi Oziel El Chayach, I believe we spoke about him. He passed away in the year 1820, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Azi Da'i, let's speak about him. He passed away in the year, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1999. He was born in 1911. Rabbi Azizi he was a great rabbi of his time. I think the 15th of Adar, if I'm not mistaken, is his Hilula. He came from great auspices. He would learn in Talmud Torah when he was young, in Yeshivat Or Torah. I think Madnin, respectively, be appointed a shochet in the year 1928, if I'm not mistaken. He was only 17 years of age through Rav Khomeini Alush, and will be ordained as a rabbi in 1934, and he would get married in 1935, and he will become the rabbi in Jerba, one of the rabbis over there, and afterwards a rabbi of Kihil over the Chagab Alon, if I'm not mistaken, for many, many years, and take on very important positions, let's just say. I think, very important. We mentioned him. Rav Alush Khomeini, who we were just speaking about, I think Gimel Elul is his Hilula. He passed away in 1956. He was a huge rabbi. And he would be working in Mednin. He would work as an educator over there, teaching. He was ordained as a Dayan at one stage in time. After Rav Kamos Haddad, I think, passed away, Rav Alush Khomeini would be appointed a chief rabbi of Madnin, and then eventually I think he would move to Eretz Yisrael in 1950 and dwell in Sfat, the holy city over there. So he's another key rabbi to mention. Rav Pinchas HaKohen, we spoke about Rav Pinchas Rachim Adad. Rav Faraj Yalush, another great rabbi, Yutet Kislev Mark Sicilio, 1921. Rav Faraj Les Rossi, he passed away in 1911. Let's say something about him. That was Dalit Tammuz, if I'm not mistaken. And he would go on to become a great rabbi in Gabs in Tunisia. He would learn Torah under the great rabbi in Jabs. And I think especially he would become, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, a head of Jewish court. And a rabbi inside the city. He was diligent. He was a writer, a quick one, and he was known as a very, very articulate, very great person, we have to point out. He would get married to Marat Amima, and I think connected to Shmuel HaKohen, Rav Shmuel HaKohen. Very interesting. So, and I believe he passed away in the year 1911. Rav Faraj did. But it's important to speak about him also. Let's speak about some more rabbis. Rav Tzion Sofer passed away in 1937. Rav Tzemach HaLevi, we're not sure the exact date. Rav Reuven Morris Alush passed away in the 1985, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he was born in 1930s. He was, so that's he's another key rabbi. Let's speak more. Rav Shushan Mazuz, I do believe we spoke about him. Rav Shlomo Daniel Yehuda Kohen passed away in 1925. Rav Shlomo Kohen Yonatan, not sure the exact passing of him, what exact date it was. Rav Shlomo Falach, he was living between 1855 to 1936. Rav Shlomo was, so that's very, very interesting to point him out. I think his name was Rav Reuven Morris Alush. That was a key rabbi. Also, so we just missed out. Rav Shalom Palach passed away in 1936, born in 1855. We didn't mention much about him before. He was born in Tunis. If I'm not mistaken, he would grow up to become a great Talmud to come, especially through the great rabbis of Tunisia of that stage in time. He would also be working as a trader while he was young, part-time, while he was very, very into Torah study. And I think eventually he would live in Susa, if I'm not mistaken, and would be responsible with regards to educating, especially in Hebrew, inside the Torah vicinity where he was teaching. I think in 1928, Hacham Yosef Gaz would Monet L'Rab Rashi Shel Tunisia, if I'm not mistaken, and Rav Shlomo Palach would be appointed the rabbi of the city of Susa. Very prominent position over there. So that's something that we very much have to point out. So that was Rav Shalom Balach, another great rabbi from Tunisia in his day, another rabbi worth mentioning about. Okay, talk a couple more rabbis. Rav Shlomo Dana, he passed away in 1913. Rav Shlomo Vazon, we spoke about today. Rav Shlomo Chori, he passed away in 1937. Rav Shlomo Mazuz, another great rabbi, lived between 1908 and 1982. He happened to, I think he was born in Jerba, and he was working as a rabbi, he was working as a judge over there, I think especially 1936, 1935. Hibe Yerachon, Hidushim Shas, Ilchat B'Shem, I think in 1956, he actually moved to Eretz Israel and would live in Netivot, if I'm not mistaken, a very prominent position. Yes, that's very interesting. Rav Shlomo Mezuz was the father of many Mezuz, another brilliant person. I think he passed away on the 25th of Tebet in 1982. That's something that we have to point out over there. Friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we are exploring the history of the Jewish community of over here, Tunisia. Very interesting. Rav Shlomo Chori, who was he? He lived between 1890 to 1937. Obviously, Rav Shlomo Mezuz, we spoke about before. Let's speak about him now. He was very much a, let's just say, a great rabbi. Rav Shlomo Mezuz was 1988, was the year I actually happened to have been born. The 25th of Tevet, I think, which is going to be in about a week time, is going to be his Hilula. Came from great auspices, Rav Menachem Mezuz. He would trained to become a rabbi, a dayan. If I'm not mistaken, I think between about 35 to 1936, Chibet Yerachon Chidosh Shas V'Ilchet B'Shem Mikabitz Al. I think in 1956 he would make Aliyah to Eretz Israel, if I'm not mistaken. Rav Shlomo Mezuz would, and take on various different positions. So that is also interesting, friends. Okay, we could speak about Rav Shlomo Mezuz, for example. Rav Shlomo Shamama. A lot of these rabbis we've already mentioned about here inside the series. Let's explore Rav Shlomo Shamama. He was a great rabbi. He passed away in 1806, way ago, long time ago, on the 21st of Tammuz, and came from great family, let's just say. So many of them will come great Torah scholars, and so on and so forth. You'll be the author of many different Torah important books. Let's just point that out. Let's explore a couple more rabbis. Rav Shmuel Tayyib. I don't think we mentioned him. He passed away relatively recently in 1956. Rav Shmuel did, if I'm not mistaken, 15th of Shvat is his Hilula. And I think he passed away in 1956. He worked as a rabbi and educator inside the city of Mehedia, and take on various different important positions. 1949 would see him go to Eretz Israel and live in Tiberias. Something to point out over here. Also Rav Shmuel Alush, he passed away in 1959. Rav Shimon Darihem HaKohen, he passed away in 1959 also. Another great rabbi from the Rihem dynasty between 1740 to 1827, on the 29th of Shvat. Rav Shimon Chireri, another great rabbi, and Rav Shimon Maimon, I think 22nd of Shvat is the date of his Hilula, Rav Shimon Maimon, but he was a great rabbi himself. He would learn under his mother's auspices, Rabbanit Astila, and his father was also, very interesting. As stated here, B'la'aviv Chacham Kalifa Be'ir Gabs Sheba Tuna. ראשית תורתו למד מפי חכם יצחק בוקובזה, רוב תורתו, מרוב המובהק חיים חורי. חכם שמעון מימון נשא לאישה את מרת פורטונה. נולדו להם 5 ילדים, I think reported over there. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting. Just the whole service, the American style over there. So that's very interesting. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. Please don't forget, you're also more than welcome to call us if you've got any questions on anything. So from me, goodbye. We're gonna go through a bit more of the history context of this area here on this special edition. Our last edition here, talking about Tunisian Jewry. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Let's speak about a few more rabbis. Rav Shmuel Alush, I think we spoke about Rav Shimon HaKohen Derihem, Rav Shimon Chereri, and Rav Shimon Maimon, for example. So let's speak about Rav Shmuel Alush, another key rabbi, I think, of his time. He passed away on the 20th of Adar. So a lot of the rabbis passed away on similar dates. He would learn Torah under the auspices of Rav David HaKohen, an author over there, and of the Bet Din of Almei Torah, and really, really grana, and let's say build confidence and build motivation of our precious students is something that we have to point out here. Yeah, very interesting. And there's some very good teachings in the Haimi website, which I will very much recommend everyone to actually look into and try and absorb and learn about the great rabbis of yesterday. Rav Shimon HaKohen Derihem, he lived between 1740 to 1827, another great rabbi of his time. Let's explore a few highlights also about him, because I think it's important we get to just get a feel of Tunisia to try and include everybody that we can have here in this channel. Rav Derihem passed away in 1827 on the 23rd of Shvat. He was born in Jerba, inside this specific island, and very, very interesting, I must say, over here. Okay, over here, so sorry, it is quite late from where I'm recording about. Rav Shimon Chereri, he passed away relatively in 2015. We should point out, 1927, he is from Jabs in Tunisia, and I think it was close to Rav Yosef HaKohen, Sosa HaKohen. To be honest with you, that's important also to find out more information. Sadly, he passed away in the year 2015. Yeah, it always brings a tear to the eye when one reads if someone suffered. Other rabbis, most notably Rav Shmuel Alush, Rav Shimon Derihem HaKohen, Rav Shimon Derihem HaKohen, Rav Shimon HaChan Derihem, Rav Shimon Chereri, I think who's divorced Sally since 1929, and he passed away in 2015. So very interesting. And Rav Shimon Maimon, he lived in 22nd of Shvat. He was very, very excited about it. And 49 days of Tumah they will get to, and then very interesting. I think there'll be a way of him getting out of the punishments, because very interesting. So something I would definitely like to point out over here. So it's just a taste of some of the great rabbis. Now, friends, anyone tuning in live over here, we are a community. We are exploring famous rabbis. Yesterday was the final part here inside the special edition of the country Turkey. We know that there's a lot of rich heritage with the Turks and the Tunisians who we happen to be speaking about. It's just very, very interesting. So, I think on that note, we're going to make a move over here. Now, friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. And please, just asking nicely, subscribe to the channel. We've got fantastic content over here, media content, and really going from strength to strength. That's something that we very much have to point out. So, I think on that note, we'd like to wish you all a Shavua Tov and a Shabbat Shalom. Take care and thanks for watching.